Let's make my favorite divination cake, a Galette de Rois, for Mardi Gras. So a Galette de Rois is a king cake, Mardi Gras king cake. So you need 2 ready-made puff pastries, 130 grams of grounded almond or almond flour, 90 grams of sugar, 2 eggs, and 1 for brushing, 130 grams of salted butter creamed, 1 teaspoon of rum, cognac, or brandy. I used brandy, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla paste. I actually used homemade vanilla powder, so it's a little bit more rustic and chunky. I probably wouldn't serve it to guests, but for me and my home, it's fine. And you also need a fève. So a fève is a ceramic trinket. So fève comes from the bean. Mardi Gras king cake used to actually have beans in them. That became the fève, which is a little ceramic trinket, and in New Orleans, that became a plastic baby. So we're going to mix together all of our ingredients except for the puff pastry, the 1 egg for brushing, and the fève, and we want to incorporate it pretty well. I could have creamed my butter a little better, so it's a little chunky, but hey, that's fine. So if you're like, hey, this looks nothing like the green purple king cake I've seen in New Orleans. So that's actually because the king cake we see in New Orleans looks more like the king cake they would have had in South France, whereas a galette de Rois looks more like a king cake you would see in northern France. But they have both in New Orleans during Mardi Gras season. All right, we're all pretty well mixed up. You can see my chunks of homemade vanilla powder. So what happens when you cut into the king cake and you get the bean, the fève, or the baby? Well, that means you are king or queen for the day. So king cake was almost banned after the French Revolution. They had just gotten rid of one king. They weren't about to crown more. But they ultimately decided that people could still have king cake except for the president of France. They don't want him getting any funny little ideas in his head. And this recipe is courtesy of Manon Lagrève, and I will tag her in this video. She has a much better video on this. And honestly, this is probably the easiest king cake I ever could have made. Here you can see my bits of butter and vanilla powder. Again, it's not perfect, but that's the thing is I feel like people are afraid of not being perfect when it comes to cooking. I've had roommates who are just terrified to cook because what if they mess up? But this just shows you, did I make a few small mistakes? Sure. But it was delicious and gone in 48 hours, so it's okay, you know? If you are serving this to guests, you do want to let them know about the trinkets in the cake. You don't want them being surprised. And king cake isn't the only divination dish. Most cultures have some sort of divination dish. And I actually did a video on Kilkenny during the Halloween season, where we talk more about Irish traditions and divination dishes. All right, so we're going to brush our edges with our egg wash. And as you see, we leave about 1 inch of the edge from the filling. And then we're going to go ahead and top that with our second puff pastry. Pretty easy peas. So I'm used to buying my Galette de Rois. New Orleans, something like this can run you about $35. So being able to make it myself for at least 1/3 of the price is really neat. However, I've never had fresh king cake or fresh Galette de Rois. It usually sits at least a day and cools down before you get your hands on it. So taking a bite of this and having it be warm and fresh was such a crazy experience. It was actually the next day when I took a bite, I was like, oh yeah, this is the day-old king cake I'm used to. So of course we crimped the edges and we're going to make ourselves a little design. I should have cut a little deeper, but it's okay. And you don't have to be perfectly artistic here. It's all going in the oven, you know? Okay. So now we're going to finish it with an egg wash all over. We're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's going to bake about 35 minutes. I feel like I could have left it in just a little bit longer. All right, into the oven. Of course, keep in mind, if you put a plastic baby Don't put it in the oven. And here's our galette de Rois. Absolutely delicious, almond-filled beauty. You should let it cool. I just could not wait that long. I had to dig in. And sadly, I did not get the fève. My mother would actually get the fève later. So consider celebrating this Mardi Gras season by making your own king cake. And let me tell you, everyone will absolutely be impressed. There are definitely some things I could have done better, but honestly, it was amazing and wonderful and delicious, and I cannot wait to make it again. But if I make it again, I have to do it before Mardi Gras Day, because afterwards, it's considered a little blasphemous. So happy Mardi Gras!